The slap landed at 6:47 on a Tuesday morning, and the sound carved through Red Eagle Diner like a knife through silence. Not a closed fist, not a shove. An open palm across Sarah Morrison's face calculated to humiliate rather than injure, the kind of violence that says you're beneath me without leaving marks that cameras love. Sarah's head jerked sideways. Coffee arced from the pot in her hand, dark liquid spattering across her polyester uniform in blooms that would stain. The ceramic mug hit linoleum and exploded into 42 pieces. She would count them later, when her hands needed something to do besides tremble with rage. She made no sound, didn't cry out, didn't drop the pot. 12 years of carrying hot liquids through crowds of drunk men had taught her body to hold on when her mind wanted to let go. But 7 feet away, wedged under table 9 with a composition notebook and a fistful of crayons, someone witnessed everything. Lily Morrison, 7 years old, curls escaping from yesterday's braids. Her father's dog tags hanging so low around her neck they dragged across tile when she moved. Processing trauma the only way children know how, by drawing what adults refuse to see. Brandon Carter stood there grinning, 17 years of private schools and country club memberships wrapped in a yellow sweatshirt that cost more than Sarah earned in 6 weeks. His Rolex caught morning light through the windows, $8,000 on his wrist. His 3 friends clustered behind him with phones raised, recording for their social feeds, documenting cruelty for entertainment. That's what you get for slow service, sweetheart. His voice carried that particular brand of cruelty that comes from never hearing the word no. The diner held its breath. 42 people, truckers nursing hangovers, farmers grabbing breakfast before 12-hour shifts, third shift workers too tired to process what they'd just witnessed. Everyone frozen, nobody moving. Sarah bent to gather mug fragments, hands steady in a way that should have warned anyone paying attention. 42 pieces of broken ceramic, each one a small, sharp truth nobody was coming to help. Nobody ever did. Under table 9, Lily kept drawing. Fast, precise strokes the way she'd been working for months. Brandon's face, the angle of his hand, the red mark blooming on her mother's cheek. Date at the top, May 14th. Times to 47 a.m. Witnesses, 42, page 73. 4 miles east, Jake Morrison woke to Montana sun slicing through blinds he kept meaning to replace. His spine screamed objections. 46 years of bad roads and worse choices had settled into his vertebrae like concrete. The apartment smelled like motor oil and old leather and the particular emptiness of a man who'd burned every bridge that mattered. He was supposed to ride to Nevada today. 3-day run with the chapter. Open highway. No memories. No ghost whispering accusations in the dark. His hand found the red bandana on the nightstand before conscious thought engaged. Muscle memory from 10 years of the same morning ritual. Red cotton stiff in places where blood had soaked through and dried and never quite washed clean no matter how many times he tried. Michael's blood, his younger brother. Dead in Helmand Province, Afghanistan, September 2011. IED blast that scattered a Marine convoy across half a mile of desert. Jake had carried this bandana every day since. Guilt folded into quarters and shoved into his back pocket like currency he could never spend. They'd fought 3 weeks before Michael deployed. Screaming match in this very apartment over choices and consequences. And the gulf between who they'd been as kids and who they'd become as men. You're picking those bikes over family. I'm picking freedom over your narrow definition of what makes a man worth something. Then you're dead to me, Jake. You hear me, dead. 11 weeks later, Michael was actually dead, and Jake never got to say the words that might have mattered. He should be riding to Nevada, should be gone already, chrome and asphalt therapy, the only kind that worked. But something felt wrong. The air tasted metallic, charged the way it did in Iraq before mortars started falling. His instincts, the ones that kept him breathing through Fallujah and through 23 years in the Hells Angels, were screaming that today was not a day to be anywhere but here. Marines learn to trust their gut even when logic says otherwise, especially ex-Marines who made every wrong choice available and somehow survived anyway. He touched the bandana once more, felt the stiff fabric where his brother's blood had dried, then rolled out of bed into whatever this day demanded. At Red Eagle Diner, Sarah moved through her routine with mechanical precision that was its own kind of dissociation. Refills, orders, smiles that never reached eyes that had forgotten how to hope. The red handprint on her cheek was already fading, but everyone could still see it. Everyone was still pretending blindness was kindness. Brandon and his pack had claimed the six-top corner booth, maximum visibility, making sure every person understood what they could get away with and who would stop them. The answer to the second question, nobody. Hey, sweetheart. Brandon didn't look up from his phone, probably uploading the video already, probably watching view counts climb in real time. Another round, and try not to take all goddamn day this time. Lily crawled out from under table 9. She'd been there since 5 in the morning when Sarah's shift started, same as every Tuesday, because 7-year-olds whose mothers work 3 jobs learn to be portable or be abandoned. She already knew more about exhaustion and desperation than most adults would learn in lifetimes of comfortable ignorance. She walked to Brandon's table with her notebook pressed against her chest. Dog tags clinked with each step, too heavy, too large, but she wore them anyway because they still smelled faintly of the father she barely remembered. "You hurt my mommy." Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. She swallowed hard, tried again louder. "You hurt my mommy, and that's wrong." Brandon finally looked up, his grin widened, cruelty transforming into entertainment. "What exactly are you going to do about it, kid?" Lily opened her notebook. 73 pages, 73 documented incidents, names, dates, faces rendered in crayon with 7-year-old attention to detail. Every time someone treated her mother like she was less than human for the crime of bringing them food. "I drew you. I drew all of them." She held up pages. Brandon's face captured from multiple angles, none flattering. Something flickered behind his eyes. Not shame, not yet, but recognition that this might complicate things. He reached for the notebook. "Give me that right," Lily ran. The bell over the door chimed. Jake Morrison walked into Red Eagle Diner for the first time in 10 years, pulled by instinct he couldn't name and didn't trust. Tuesday morning tradition he'd maintained even after the family shattered. Same diner, same time, different everything else. He stopped 3 steps inside. Sarah Morrison looked up from behind the counter and went completely still. 10 years collapsed into nothing. 10 years of silence and guilt in the careful architecture of building a life around a hole shaped exactly like family. Jake, his name cracked coming out of her mouth. He took in the scene with combat-trained efficiency. Her red cheek, the tremor in her hand she was failing to hide, the exhaustion carved into her face like someone had aged her forward 20 years. The kid had to be the kid Michael's daughter clutching a notebook and staring at him with eyes that looked exactly like his brother's had at that age. "Who put their hands on you?" His voice came out flat and dangerous, the tone that made civilians cross streets. Sarah shook her head. "Nobody. You need to leave, Jake. You can't be here." "Asked you a question." The kid stepped between them. Brave or foolish, Jake couldn't determine yet. She was tiny, couldn't weigh more than 50 pounds soaking wet. Those dog tags around her neck were definitely Michael's. Jake would know them blind, had held them at the memorial service, while Sarah refused to let him inside. "Are you my Uncle Jake?" Direct question, no fear, just curiosity and something that resembled hope. Jake looked at Sarah. Sarah looked at the floor. Sarah, is this?" Her name is Lily." Sarah's voice barely registered above the diner's ambient noise. "She's 7, and you need to leave before you make everything worse than it already is." Lily ignored her mother entirely. She studied Jake's face with the intensity of someone making life-altering decisions. Took in the leather vest, the scars mapping his knuckles, the beard with too much gray for 46. The way he stood like violence was always option 1. Most kids would run. Most adults did. Lily extended her small hand with the notebook. "My daddy talked about you. Before the IED. Before he came home in a box. He said you were brave. He said you made bad choices sometimes, but you always came when people were in trouble." Jake's throat closed. Michael had said that after everything. After their last conversation ended with, "You're dead to me. Can you help my mommy? I have evidence." Sarah made a sound like she'd been gut-punched. "Lily, no." But Jake was already taking the notebook, already flipping through page after page of heartbreaking documentation. 73 pages. Dates, times, names, faces drawn with attention to detail that would make prosecutors weep. This 7-year-old had been running surveillance for months, building a case. waiting for someone to care enough to act. One name appeared 23 times. Brandon Carter. The bell chimed. The manager rushed over, nervous sweat beading his forehead despite the diner's air conditioning. Sir, you need to leave. Right now. This is a private establishment, and we don't want your kind of trouble here. Jake didn't look up from the notebook. What kind of trouble you think I bring, Byron? Your kind? The manager gestured at the vest. Hell's Angels, Montana chapter, road captain patch on the front. 23 years of loyalty marked in leather and thread and blood when necessary. On the wall-mounted television behind the counter, morning news played with sound muted. Jake could read closed captions well enough. Viral video, teenager slaps waitress. 75,000 views in 30 minutes. Comments flooding in. People identifying Brandon Carter, senator's son, third documented incident this year. Questions about privilege and accountability and whether money could still buy immunity. Jake's phone started buzzing in his pocket. Then again, then continuously. The Brotherhood group chat lighting up like wildfire. Stone, brother, you seeing this, that's your family in the video. Bulldog, say the word and we roll, all of us. Preacher, child asks for help, we answer. That's the code. Jake looked at Lily, at those eyes exactly like Michael's. At the courage it must have required to approach the scariest looking man in the room and ask for help from a stranger. He'd failed his brother, failed to be there when it counted, failed to say the words that might have prevented Michael from enlisting in the first place, running from their fight straight into a war zone. He would not fail this kid. How many pages feature this Brandon kid? His voice stayed quiet, but everyone in earshot heard the promise underneath. Lily flipped through her notebook. 23 times. He's the worst one. Jake pulled out his phone, hit speed dial. Stone answered before the first ring finished. What do you need? Get the chapter. Every single brother. Red Eagle Diner. Jake kept his eyes on Lily. We're protecting a child who had the courage to ask for help when 42 adults looked the other way. How many you want? Jake looked at the notebook. At 73 pages of documented cruelty, at this tiny girl who'd been braver than grown men with guns and badges. All of them, every single brother within riding distance. And Stone tell them to bring their colors. We're making a statement that's going to echo. He ended the call. The diner had gone completely silent. Everyone watching, everyone understanding that the balance of power had just shifted on its axis. Sarah grabbed his arm. Her hand was shaking hard enough he could feel it through leather. Jake, you don't understand. Brandon's father is Senator Richard Carter, Judiciary Committee. He owns half this county. You can't. I can, and I will. Your daughter asked for help. That means something. He looked down at Lily. It means everything. Lily's face transformed. First genuine smile she'd probably worn in months, maybe years. The ground started to rumble, not earthquake rumble, not thunder, the particular bass note frequency of motorcycle engines. Multiple. Many, growing exponentially closer with every passing second. The manager went pale. Oh God, not today. Please not today of all days. Customers started abandoning breakfast, leaving cash on tables, heading for exits. They knew what was coming. Small-town Montana understood exactly what it meant when the Hells Angels mobilized with purpose. Jake knelt down. Got on Lily's eye level even though his knees cracked like gunshots and his spine screamed objections. Listen carefully, little one. Things are about to get very loud and probably scary looking. But nobody's gonna hurt you. Not while I'm breathing. You understand me? Lily nodded, then without warning she hugged him. Tiny arms around his neck, dog tags pressing cold against his collarbone, where his own dog tags used to hang before he lost the right to wear them. Thank you for coming, and when I asked, she whispered it like prayer. Jake's eyes burned. He hadn't cried in 30 years, not since the memorial service when they handed him Michael's flag and Sarah spit in his face. Wasn't about to start now, but damn if this kid wasn't making it difficult. The rumble became a roar. The first bikes pulled into the parking lot. Then more, then so many the asphalt disappeared under chrome and black leather. Harley-Davidson engines perfectly maintained throaty and powerful and promising consequences. Two abreast in formation, staggered by half a bike length exactly. Military precision because most of them had served. Most of them understood discipline and brotherhood and the particular responsibility that came with being the biggest, scariest presence in any room. Stone pulled up first, 68 years old. Vietnam veteran, though he rarely spoke about those years. President of the Montana chapter for 3 decades. Gray beard down to his chest. Face like weathered saddle leather. Eyes that had witnessed too much and forgotten nothing. Behind him, Bulldog the VP. Bear 6'6" and gentle, as his nickname suggested. Wrench, the only woman in the chapter, and twice as lethal as any man. Preacher, the chaplain who'd buried too many brothers and still believed in redemption. Doc, former combat medic who couldn't quite leave the war behind even after 20 years home. And behind them, 114 more, the entire chapter mobilized. Every brother within 3 hours riding distance. Tuesday morning, and they dropped everything. Work, family, sleep. Because one of their own had called. Because a child had asked for help, and that meant something in a world where most things didn't. 120 motorcycles filled the parking lot of Red Eagle Diner. The sound was biblical, the visual even more overwhelming. All that leather and chrome and controlled violence waiting for direction. They shut down engines in perfect sequence. The silence afterward felt louder than the thunder that preceded it. Stone walked in first, moved like a man who'd never encountered anything human worth fearing. He assessed the scene with combat efficiency, Sarah with her red cheek, Lily with her notebook, Jake standing protective between them and the world. "We got a situation here." His voice was gravel and whiskey and absolute authority. Jake nodded. "Kid's been documenting abuse for 6 months. 73 incidents, all at this location, all ignored by every adult who should have intervened. Who put hands on the lady, Senator's kid, Brandon Carter, already viral, 2 million views and climbing." Stone's jaw tightened in a way that made strong men nervous. Senator thinks his money makes him untouchable. Seems that way? Then the senator is about to receive an education. Stone looked at Lily. His face softened in a transformation that turned him from terrifying to grandfather in half a second. "Hey there, little ass, what's your name?" Lily's voice came out stronger now, emboldened by numbers. "Lily Morrison, I'm 7. That's my mommy." "Lily, beautiful name, I'm Stone. These are my brothers. We ride for people who can't ride for themselves. You asked for help. We're here. What do you need from us?" Lily held up her notebook like evidence at trial. "I need people to stop hurting my mommy. I need people to be nice like they're supposed to be. Her voice cracked. "I need someone to actually care." The diner had cleared out except for Brotherhood now. 42 witnesses had become 0 in under 5 minutes. Cowardice looked identical across every generation. But then Bear stepped forward. 6'6", 280 pounds of muscle and ink, and the kind of face that made children cry and adults cross streets proactively. He had scars layered on scars, hands that could crush engine blocks. He looked at Lily and did something that made every man present respect him more. He knelt, got down on her eye level, made himself small, made himself safe despite being physically incapable of either. "Lily, that's a flower name, you know. You know what I like about flowers?" His voice came out gentle as summer rain. "They grow through concrete, through impossible places where nothing should survive. But they push through anyway, because they're stronger than anyone expects." Lily studied him, this massive, terrifying man on his knees in a truck stop diner, speaking to her like she mattered more than anything else in his day. "Are you going to hurt the bad people?" "No, little warrior. We're going to make sure nobody hurts good people anymore. There's a significant difference between those things." "What do people call you?" "They call me Bear." "That's a good name. Bears protect their family." "Yes, we do." He extended his enormous hand. "And your family now, that means we protect you, always." Lily placed her tiny hand in his palm. Her fingers disappeared entirely. Everyone watching felt something fundamental shift. This wasn't about revenge or respect or any of the usual motorcycle club territorial nonsense. This was about a 7-year-old asking for help and 120 men deciding that mattered more than anything else happening in their lives today. Stone pulled out his phone. "Someone get me Senator Carter's direct office line." Wrench had it in 40 seconds, pulled from databases she shouldn't have been able to access. Stone put it on speaker. The call connected. A pleasant secretary's voice answered. Senator Carter's office, how may I direct your call? This is Stone, president of the Hells Angels Montana chapter. I need to speak with the senator regarding his son's behavior this morning. Long pause, then ice in her voice. The senator doesn't take calls from, tell him we have documentation of 23 separate assault incidents. Tell him his son put hands on a woman in front of her 7-year-old daughter this morning. Tell him we're currently at Red Eagle Diner with 120 witnesses and comprehensive evidence. He has exactly 3 hours to bring his boy here to apologize publicly and sincerely. That's clock A, 3 hours. After that, we escalate to next-level consequences. He ended the call. The phone rang back in 38 seconds. Stone let it ring, establishing exactly who held power in this negotiation. On the 5th ring, he answered. Put it on speaker again. This is Richard Carter. Who the hell do you think you are threatening a United States senator? Stone's voice stayed preternaturally calm. Reasonable, terrifying in its control. Not threatening, sir. Informing. Your son committed assault. We have documentation of a pattern spanning 6 months. You have 3 hours to bring him here to make amends properly. Clock's ticking. My son made a mistake. I'm prepared to compensate the woman generously for her inconvenience. $50,000. Cash. She signs an NDA and this unfortunate incident disappears. Sarah flinched like she'd been slapped again. Lily watched her mother's face crumple with the particular devastation of having a price tag attached to your dignity. Jake spoke up, voice carrying the weight of 23 years in the Brotherhood. Your money isn't welcome here, Senator. Your son is. 3 hours. Public apology, or we take this evidence to every media outlet in the country. You're threatening a minor child. We're protecting one. Jake looked at Lily. Massive difference. Richard Carter's voice turned sharp, calculated the tone of a man used to winning through intimidation. You have absolutely no idea who you're dealing with. Vietnam, 68 to 70, Marine Force Recon. Stone's voice carried ghosts of things he'd never speak about in polite company. I know exactly who I'm dealing with, Senator. Question you should be asking yourself, do you know who we are? He ended the call. 2 hours crawled past. The Brotherhood waited with the particular stillness of men trained in patience and violence, comfortable with both. Sarah tried to work, but her hands wouldn't cooperate. Lily sat at table 9 with her crayons, adding new pages to her documentation. Jake stood by the door watching the street, reading threats in the way cars slowed down, patterns he'd learned in Fallujah. Stone approached Jake quietly. You failed to mention you hadn't seen your sister-in-law in 10 years. Didn't seem relevant to the current situation. Everything's relevant when family's involved. What happened between you two? Jake touched the bandana in his pocket. My brother deployed to Afghanistan. We'd fought 3 weeks before. Terrible fight. Words you can never take back once they're spoken. He died over there. Sarah blamed me. Said if I'd been family instead of a biker, maybe Michael wouldn't have enlisted. Maybe he would have stayed home. I got no argument against that logic. She was probably right. You've been carrying that guilt alone for a decade. Seems fair as payment. Nothing about it's fair, but here's your opportunity to do what your brother would have done if he were still breathing. Protect his family, be present when it counts. The ground rumbled again. Different sound this time. Vehicles plural, the wrong kind of power. 3 black SUVs pulled up, tinted windows, government plates. Senator Richard Carter stepped out of the middle vehicle, flanked by Deputy Frank Collins and Judge Harrison and 6 security personnel who looked like they ate nails for breakfast and washed them down with violence. Brandon was conspicuously absent. The senator walked into the diner like he owned it. He probably did through shell corporations and political favors and the particular corruption that flourished in small-town America when nobody was watching. He was 55. Expensive suit, perfect hair, the kind of handsome that cameras loved and voters trusted. Behind his eyes lived the particular calculation of a man who'd never lost and had no intention of starting. He placed a briefcase on the counter, opened it with theatrical precision, stacks of cash arranged like props. $50,000. For the woman's unfortunate experience. My son made a mistake. Boys will be busts, as they say. But I'm a reasonable man trying to resolve this sensibly. Sarah stared at the money. $50,000 would transform her life. Pay off medical debt from Michael's funeral. Cover Lily's needs. Maybe buy a month where she didn't work until her hands bled. Lily stepped forward. That's not an apology. The senator looked down at her like she was an insect buzzing near his lunch. Little girl adults are conducting business here. My name is Lily Morrison. I'm 7 years old. Your son hurt my mommy 23 times. I drew every single time. Want to see? She held up her notebook. The senator's expression shifted, calculation morphing to concern, morphing to something approaching fear. Where did you get those drawings? I drew them every Tuesday for 6 months. You have meetings here. You and Judge Harrison and Deputy Collins and Mr. Barnes from City Council, and she flippy pages listing names and dates with prosecutorial precision. The senator grabbed for the notebook. Bear moved faster than should have been physically possible for someone his size. Interposed his massive body between the senator and the child. You don't touch her. Each word fell like an anvil. Deputy Collins stepped forward, hand moving toward his weapon. Step aside immediately or I'm arresting every single one of you. Stone actually laughed. For what specifically? Frank protecting a child from assault. For threatening a senator, extortion, intimidation, obstruction. I'll manufacture whatever charges stick. You're on his payroll, aren't you? Jake's voice cut through the tension. That's why you're here, not as law enforcement, as purchased muscle. Collins smiled without warmth, didn't bother denying it. Prove it in court. His phone buzzed, then the senator's, then Judge Harrison's. All three looked at their screens simultaneously, faces transforming as they processed information. Brandon's video had hit 3 million views, national news coverage, cable networks running segments, had justice. For Sarah trending across every platform. The internet had identified Brandon, connected him to his father, started asking uncomfortable questions about privilege and accountability and patterns of behavior. The senator's political instincts activated. This wasn't disappearing with money. This was testimony and investigations and everything he'd spent 15 years building burning down in real time. Deputy Collins, I want these men arrested immediately. Threatening behavior, disturbing the peace, creating public hazard. Whatever charges you need to make them stick. Collins moved toward Jake. Turn around, hands behind your back. Jake didn't move. On what specific grounds? I'll think of something during the drive. Collins pulled out handcuffs. Lily screamed, No, he's helping. He's the only person who helped. Sarah grabbed Lily, trying to pull her back to safety, but Lily fought with everything she had. 7 years old and fighting like her life depended on outcomes. Bear picked her up with infinite gentleness, held her safe while she sobbed into his vest. Jake let Collins cuff him, didn't resist, made eye contact with Stone. Trust in that look. Brotherhood code written in glances. I'm going inside so you can work outside. You're making a catastrophic mistake, Stone said quietly, voice promising consequences. Collins smiled. I'm doing my job protecting a senator from domestic terrorists. They led Jake out, past the Brotherhood standing witness, past Sarah who couldn't look at him without seeing every failure of the past decade, past Lily crying so hard she could barely breathe. At the door, Jake stopped, looked back at his niece. Hey, little warrior, remember what I said. Family doesn't abandon you when things get hard. I'll be back, I promise. Then they shoved him into a patrol car and drove away toward the county lockup. The senator smiled, satisfied, problem contained. He'd won this round. He didn't see Wrench in the corner, recording everything on 3 separate devices uploading to cloud storage. Didn't see Stone making calls to every news outlet in Montana. Didn't see the Brotherhood spreading out strategically, taking positions or preparing for whatever came next. And he definitely didn't see Brandon Carter 40 miles north at the family's lake cabin, pacing and crying and trying to work up the courage to do the hardest thing he'd ever attempted in his privileged life. Lily pressed her face against Bear's vest and sobbed like her heart was breaking. The notebook fell from her hands. 73 pages of evidence scattered across the diner floor like snow. The senator stepped on one deliberately, ground it under his expensive Italian shoe. Problem solved. But Sarah Morrison bent down and gathered every single page with hands that had stopped shaking. Carefully, deliberately. When she stood, something fundamental had changed in her face. The exhaustion was still there, but underneath steel that had been forged in fire. You think you solved a problem? Her voice came out stronger than it had in years. You just declared war on the wrong family. The senator laughed. With who, a waitress and some bikers, I've been in politics 30 years. I know exactly how this ends. Sarah held her daughter's notebook against her chest like armor. So do I. Outside, 119 motorcycles fired up simultaneously. The sound shook windows, rattled dishes, promised consequences that money couldn't purchase and power couldn't prevent. The Brotherhood pulled out, not leaving, repositioning, planning, preparing. Stone made 3 phone calls in rapid succession. Clock B starts now, 24 hours. Senator resigns or evidence goes to FBI. Clock C, Jake's arraignment in 48 hours. We're getting him out before then. Clock D, media embargo lifts in 72 hours. National coverage guaranteed. Inside Red Eagle Diner, Sarah Morrison stood with her daughter in her arms and realized something she'd forgotten over 2 years of grief and exhaustion and slow surrender to circumstances. She had family. Not blood, but family. And family didn't abandon you when situations got complicated. They answered when you called. They knelt for your children. They accepted handcuffs so you could stay free. They promised without words that this wasn't over. Jake Morrison sat in the back of a patrol car and touched his empty back pocket where the red bandana should be. He'd given it to Lily when Bear picked her up. Slipped it into her small hand while everyone was distracted by the senator's theatrics. His brother's blood on that cloth. 10 years of guilt and grief and carrying the weight of failure like stones in his chest. Now in his niece's hands. His brother's daughter. Family he'd abandoned and just found again. He smiled in the dark. This time he wasn't walking away. This time he was all in. Because a 7-year-old had asked for help when 42 adults chose convenience over courage. And Jake Morrison had learned 10 years too late, but just in time, that being present was the only currency that actually mattered. The patrol car pulled away. In the diner, Lily clutched the red bandana and whispered to her mother, "He'll come back," he promised. Sarah held her daughter and chose for the first time in 2 years to believe that promises could still mean something. Behind them, taped to the wall where customers couldn't miss it, Lily's drawing of Uncle Jake. Not scary. Not dangerous. Just family. And in Montana, family meant something words couldn't quite capture, but actions would prove. County lockup smelled like disinfectant and despair, and the particular staleness of places where hope goes to die. Jake Morrison sat on a metal bench in a holding cell, wrists still sore from cuffs that had been too tight on purpose. Collins knew what he was doing. 30 years of small-town corruption made a man efficient at cruelty. The charge sheet read like fiction: assault through threatening a public official, disturbing the peace, resisting arrest. All lies. All documented with the kind of thoroughness that suggested this wasn't Collins's first time manufacturing evidence. Jake didn't care about the charges. He cared about Lily's face when they dragged him out. That raw terror, that sense of abandonment she was probably drowning in right now. His phone had been confiscated, his vest, his wallet, everything except the ghosts he carried. Through the reinforced glass window of his cell, he could see Collins at a desk, feet up, scrolling through his phone, laughing at something. Probably the video of Sarah getting slapped. Probably comments from people who thought a waitress deserved whatever she got. The door buzzed. Stone walked in with Preacher, both wearing their colors, neither looking remotely concerned about being in a police station. Collins's feet hit the floor. Visiting hours are, save it, Frank. Stone's voice carried the weight of 30 years leading men who had seen combat. We're posting bail. There's no bail set, won't be until arraignment, 48 hours minimum. Judge Harrison's decision, I'm guessing? Collins smiled. Judge makes the rules. Judge is on the senator's payroll. We both know it. Question is, how long you been taking his money? Something flickered in Collins's eyes. Not shame, recognition that the game was changing. Preacher stepped forward. Former Army chaplain. Combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He'd buried more brothers than most men would ever know. His voice came out gentle, pastoral, absolutely unyielding. Frank, you're 43 years old, been a deputy 14 years. Good record until about 5 years ago. That's when the senator's money started flowing. Started small, look the other way on a traffic ticket, lose some paperwork, then bigger. Bury assault complaints, intimidate witnesses. Colin stood, hand near his weapon. You need to leave. Your daughter's 9. Emily goes to Pinewood Elementary, plays soccer. You coach her team on Saturdays. Preacher's voice never changed tone, just stated facts. What's she gonna think when she finds out what daddy became? You threatening my kid? I'm reminding you that you have one, that she watches what you do, that one day she'll ask questions about the man you were. The door buzzed again. Wrench walked in carrying a laptop. She set it on Collins's desk without asking permission. Pulled up a spreadsheet. 5 years of deposits. Your bank account. Started at $500 a month. Now you're pulling $3 grand. All from shell corporations traced back to the senator's network. She turned the laptop so Collins could see. FBI's gonna love this. Collins went pale. How did you? I fix motorcycles and hack systems. Turns out corruption leaves digital fingerprints everywhere. Wrench smiled, no warmth in it. You're done, Frank. Question is whether you go down alone or take everyone with you. Stone leaned against the desk. Here's what's happening. You're releasing Jake. Right now. No bail, no arraignment. You're going to realize you made a mistake in the heat of the moment. And in exchange, we don't send this data to the FBI. Yet. That's extortion. That's mercy, which is more than you showed that 7-year-old girl today. Collins looked at the spreadsheet, at his career ending in real time, at the choice between self-preservation and loyalty to a senator who'd throw him under the bus the second it became convenient. He unlocked Jake's cell without another word. 10 minutes later, Jake walked out of county lockup into afternoon sun that felt like vindication. The Brotherhood had assembled in the parking lot, all 119 bikes, waiting. Stone handed Jake his vest, his phone, his wallet with Michael's photo still tucked inside. Lily okay? First words out of Jake's mouth. At Preacher's house with Sarah, protected. Bears with them. Nobody's getting near those two. Jake's phone had 63 missed calls, texts flooding in, national news outlets requesting interviews, local media camping outside the diner. The story had metastasized from viral video to cultural moment in under 6 hours. Stone's phone rang. He listened for 30 seconds. His face went hard. We need to move. Now. What happened? Brandon Carter just walked into Pinewood Police Station, not Collins' station. The real police. He's asking for protection. Says he wants to testify against his father. The pieces were shifting faster than anyone anticipated. 40 miles north, Senator Richard Carter stood in his lake cabin, surrounded by silence that felt like accusation. His wife's photo stared at him from the mantel. Rebecca, dead 3 years from cancer that money couldn't cure. The beginning of his spiral into everything he'd sworn he'd never become. He'd started taking bribes to pay her medical bills. $800,000 in experimental treatments that bought 6 extra months of watching her waste away. After she died, the bribes continued because stopping meant admitting it had all been for nothing. Brandon had been 15 when his mother died. Angry, lost desperate for his father's attention. Richard had thrown money at the problem instead of showing up. Easier to buy silence than deal with grief. Now his son was at a police station talking to real cops, probably destroying everything. His phone rang. Judge Harrison. We have a problem. A significant problem. I'm aware. The biker's evidence. That little girl's notebook. It's worse than we thought. She documented everything. Our Tuesday meetings, names, dates, amounts discussed. She doesn't understand what she heard, but prosecutors will. Richard's hand tightened on the phone. A 7-year-old's drawings aren't at evidence. Combined with Brandon's testimony, with financial records, with the FBI investigation that apparently started months ago, Harrison's voice cracked. We're finished, Richard. All of us. Then we contain it. How exactly do we contain the girl? She's the only direct witness. Without her testimony, her drawings are just pictures. Silence on the line. The kind that comes before crossing a line you can't uncross. What are you suggesting? Richard closed his eyes, saw Rebecca's face, heard her voice from hospice. Promise me you'll take care of Brandon. Promise me you'll be the father he needs. He'd broken that promise every day since. Nothing. I'm suggesting nothing. I need to think. He ended the call, poured whiskey with shaking hands, looked at his wife's photo and wondered when he'd become unrecognizable. At Preacher's house, Lily sat at the kitchen table with her crayons spread out like weapons. Sarah paced. Bear stood by the window, watching the street with the stillness of a man who'd done perimeter security in hostile territory. Lily was drawing again. Not documentation this time. Processing. A therapeutic exercise her school counselor had suggested after Michael died. Draw what you feel when words aren't enough. She drew Uncle Jake in handcuffs, Bear kneeling, her mother's red cheek, Brandon's face, but this time with tears. Sarah stopped pacing, looked at the last drawing. Baby, why did you draw him crying? Lily didn't look up. Because he's sad, like me. Sad people do bad things sometimes, but that doesn't mean they're bad forever. He hurt me. I know, but he's scared of his daddy. I heard them talking on the phone once. His daddy yells a lot, makes Brandon cry. Sarah knelt beside her daughter. When did you hear that? Lots of times. They come to the diner and Brandon tries to make his daddy proud, but his daddy just looks at his phone. So Brandon gets mean to other people to see if his daddy notices. 7 years old and already understanding human psychology better than most therapists. Bear's phone buzzed. He read the message, looked at Sarah. Stone needs us at the station. Brandon's talking. We should bring Lily. Absolutely not. She's been through enough. She's the witness, Sarah. Her testimony corroborates everything Brandon's saying. Without her, it's just a troubled kid acting out. She's 7. I know, I got a granddaughter same age. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't critical. Bear's voice stayed gentle. But this is how we end it. This is how we make sure nobody can hurt you again. Sarah looked at Lily, at her daughter who'd been braver than 42 adults, who'd asked for help when everyone else looked away, who documented injustice with crayons and composition notebooks because she believed the truth mattered. Lily, do you want to help Uncle Jake? Lily's head came up fast. Is he okay? He's out, he's safe, but we need you to tell people what you saw. Tell them about your drawings. Can you do that? Lily gathered her notebooks, all 73 pages plus the new ones. I'm ready. They loaded into Bear's truck, drove to Pinewood Police Station through streets lined with news vans and cameras. The story had exploded, national coverage, talking heads debating privilege and accountability and whether a teenage boy could be rehabilitated. Inside the station, Brandon Carter sat in an interview room looking nothing like the smirking kid from this morning. Red eyes, shaking hands, the particular devastation of someone watching their world collapse. Chief Daniels sat across from him. Real cop, not Collins's kind. 30 years serving Pinewood, honestly watching corruption spread like cancer through his department. Start from the beginning. Everything. Brandon's voice came out hoarse from crying. My father's been paying people off for 5 years. Judge Harrison, Deputy Collins, city council members, contractors, anyone who could make problems disappear. What kind of problems? Mine mostly. I've been arrested 8 times, DUI, assault, vandalism. Every time my father made it go away, paid the victims, buried the reports, told me I was special, told me the rules didn't apply to our family. Why come forward now? Brandon pulled something from his pocket. A drawing, Lily's drawing. The one where she'd captured his face with tears. Because a 7-year-old forgave me before I even apologized. Because she drew me like I could be better. And I want to be. The door opened. Stone walked in with Jake. Behind them, Sarah carrying Lily. Brandon saw Lily and flinched. Stood up like he might run. Lily walked straight to him. Looked up at this teenager who'd hurt her mother 23 times. Who'd slapped Sarah across the face this morning. Who'd probably damaged dozens of other people with his privilege and cruelty. She extended her hand. Hi, I'm Lily. You're Brandon? He stared at her hand like it might be a trap. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what I did to your mom. I know. That's why I drew you crying. Because sorry people cry. How did you know I was crying? Because I cry too when I miss my daddy, when I'm scared, when things are too big. She held up her notebook. Want to see my drawings? What happened next would become the moment that broke the internet. The moment that made prosecutors weep and juries convict and defense attorneys throw up their hands. Lily showed Brandon her drawings, page by page, his face appearing 23 times. Each incident documented with heartbreaking detail. Dates, times, exact words. This one's from February. You threw coffee at my mommy because she forgot extra cream. This one's from March. You called her a name I'm not allowed to say. This one's from April. Brandon watched his cruelty cataloged by a child, watched evidence of who he'd become pile up in crayon and careful handwriting. By page 15, he was crying again. By page 23, he was on his knees. I'm a monster. Lily shook her head. Monsters don't cry. Monsters don't say sorry. You're just a hurt person who hurt other people. But you can stop. She handed him a blank page from her notebook. Want to draw how you feel it helps. The police chief's phone rang. He stepped out, came back 2 minutes later with a face carved from granite. We have a situation. Judge Harrison just issued an emergency custody order. Claims Lily's being coached by a biker gang. Claims her drawings are fabricated evidence. He's sending deputies to take her into protective custody. Sarah grabbed Lily. Over my dead body. Harrison's got legal authority. I can't stop. Stone's phone exploded with alerts. Then Jake's, then everyone's. The video had dropped. Wrench had been recording everything at the diner this morning. Everything. The slap, the senator's bribe attempt, Collins' threatening arrest, the Brotherhood protecting Lily. She'd sent it to 50 news outlets simultaneously. 10 million views in 20 minutes. The narrative had shifted from troubled teen to systemic corruption exposed by brave child. Harrison's custody order looked like exactly what it was: desperate men trying to silence a witness. Chief Daniels made a decision that would cost him his job and save his conscience. I'm denying the custody transfer. Judge Harrison is compromised. This child stays with her mother. His phone rang again. This time he didn't step out. Put it on speaker. Collins's voice panicked. Chief, we have a situation at the judge's ranch. Armed men. They're saying they have the girl. Everyone went still. Sarah counted heads. Lily was right here, safe. What girl? Daniels asked. The Morrison kid. They grabbed her from Preacher's house 20 minutes ago. They're demanding the senator deliver $10 million or they'll... The call cut off. Stone was already moving. That's impossible. Lily's been here the whole time. Jake's mind raced. Unless this is a setup. Unless someone thinks they grabbed her but got the wrong kid. Wrench pulled up security footage from Preacher's house. Rewound to 30 minutes ago. 3 black SUVs, men in tactical gear, smashing through the door, grabbing a small figure in the back bedroom, fleeing. But Lily had left with Bear 45 minutes ago. Who's in that bedroom? Jake's voice came out deadly quiet. Preacher went white. Oh God, my granddaughter, Emma, she's 9. She was sleeping over, same height as Lily, same build. Stone was already on his phone. Get every brother to Harrison's ranch, now. Full mobilization. A child's been taken and we're getting her back. The room erupted into controlled chaos. Brotherhood members receiving texts, bikes firing up across town. The machine of loyalty and protection grinding into motion. Brandon stood. I know where they're taking her. The ranch has a bunker. My father showed me once. Said it was for emergencies. Can you draw a map? Chief Daniels shoved paper at him. Brandon's hands shook so badly he could barely hold the pen. I can do better. I can take you there. Sarah grabbed Jake's arm. That's not your fight. Emma's not your family. She's Preacher's granddaughter. That makes her family. Jake looked at Lily, at this 7-year-old who taught a town what courage looked like. Besides, someone taught me today that showing up is the only thing that matters. Lily hugged his leg, pressed her face against his vest. Bring Emma home, like you brought me home. I will, I promise. The Brotherhood assembled faster than should have been possible. 120 bikes converging on Pinewood Police Station, armed legally, every weapon documented and registered because they knew how this would look. Knew the media was watching. Knew one wrong move would undermine everything. Stone addressed the chapter in the parking lot. Cars stopped to watch. Phones recorded. History was happening and everyone could feel it. A 9-year-old girl has been taken. Mistaken identity. Wrong place, wrong time. She's terrified and alone and surrounded by desperate men who just realized they grabbed the wrong kid. We're going to get her back. We're going to do it with the book. No unnecessary force, no escalation. But we are going in there and we are bringing her home because that's what we do. We ride for those who can't ride for themselves. Today that's Emma. Who's with me? 120 voices. We ride. The convoy formed. Police escort front and back because Chief Daniels had decided which side of history he wanted to be on. News helicopters overhead. Live coverage on every network. The whole world watching Montana handle justice the old-fashioned way. At Harrison's ranch, Emma cried in a basement bunker while men argued overhead about what to do with her. She was small for 9, terrified, asking for her papa in a voice that broke hearts. Senator Carter had arrived 10 minutes ago, seen the wrong child, realized the catastrophic mistake his people had made. This isn't her. This isn't the Morrison kid. Collins paced. So what do we do? Let her go, immediately, before this becomes a kidnapping charge. It's already a kidnapping charge. Judge Harrison sat with his head in his hands. We're finished, all of us. The moment we took this child, we guaranteed federal prosecution. The senator's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered on speaker. Stone's voice calm and cold. You have something that doesn't belong to you. We're 2 minutes out. Here's how this ends. You send Emma out unharmed, right now. And maybe you don't face charges for child abduction. This was a mistake. A terrible mistake. Mistakes are accidents. This was desperation. But you've got one chance to do the right thing. One after that we come in. Richard Carter looked at Emma, at her tear-streaked face and the terror in her eyes, saw his own daughter at that age. The daughter he'd failed, the son he'd ruined, the wife he'd disappointed, saw clearly, maybe for the first time in 5 years, who he'd become. Send her out. His voice broke. Send her out now. Collins hesitated. Senator, I said send her out. The thunder of motorcycles shook the ranch. 120 bikes surrounding the property. Formation perfect. Discipline absolute. The front door opened. Emma walked out alone, crying, running the second she saw daylight. Preacher met her halfway, scooped her up, held his granddaughter like she was the most precious thing in the world. The Brotherhood held position, didn't advance, didn't celebrate, just witnessed. FBI vehicles screamed up the driveway. Federal agents who'd been investigating this corruption ring for months, who'd been waiting for a mistake big enough to justify action. They got 3 arrests for the price of 1, Senator Richard Carter, Judge Harrison, Deputy Collins, all in handcuffs, all reading their rights, all watching their careers in freedom evaporate in real time. News cameras captured everything: the senator's fall, the Brotherhood's restraint, Emma safe in her grandfather's arms. And somewhere in the crowd, 7-year-old Lily Morrison held her mother's hand and understood that sometimes the good guys win. Not because they're stronger, not because they're richer, but because they show up, because they kneel for children, because they believe that dignity isn't negotiable and respect isn't optional, and some things matter more than anything money can buy. Jake Morrison stood with his colors and his brothers and felt Michael's ghost finally rest. Felt 10 years of guilt transform into something lighter. Purpose, maybe. Redemption. His phone buzzed. Text from Sarah. Thank you for showing up. He typed back always. That's what family does. Brandon Carter sat in the back of a police car, not under arrest, but protective custody. Through the window, he watched the senator led away in handcuffs, watched his father's empire collapse, watched consequences finally arrive after years of delayed justice. He pulled out the blank page Lily had given him, found a pen, started to draw. Not cruelty this time, not privilege or arrogance or the casual violence of someone who'd never been told no. He drew Lily's face, the way she'd looked at him with forgiveness he didn't deserve, with hope he hadn't earned. Drew himself kneeling, apologizing, trying to be better. The picture was terrible. He had none of Lily's talent, but it was honest, and maybe that was enough for a start. The Brotherhood rolled out as the sun touched the horizon. Formation perfect. 120 bikes heading home. Mission complete. Child safe. Justice delivered. They didn't stop at the diner, didn't celebrate, didn't make speeches about what they'd accomplished. They just rode. Because the work was done and morning would bring new problems, and somewhere in Montana a child would need someone to show up. And when that call came, they'd be ready. They'd always be ready, because that's what family does. 1 week after the arrest, Red Eagle Diner reopened under new ownership. The deed carried Sarah Morrison's name now because the previous owner decided retirement looked preferable to explaining his complicity to federal investigators. He signed it over for $1 and a handwritten promise: keep the coffee strong and the mercy stronger. The first customer through the door at 6 in the morning was Brandon Carter. No Yale sweatshirt this time. Plain white t-shirt, jeans worn at the knees from actual use rather than designer distressing. Court-ordered community service badge clipped to his belt like a scarlet letter. 6 months as a waiter, learning humility one refill at a time. Sarah watched him tie an apron with hands that still trembled. The kid looked like he'd aged a decade in 7 days. Good. Maybe Tara would teach what privilege never bothered to. Table 9 needs water. 4 glasses. Move like you actually care. Brandon grabbed a pitcher, walked to the table where Stone and 3 Brotherhood members sat reviewing newspapers. Every major outlet had run the story. Senator's empire crumbles. Corruption exposed by child's crayon drawings. Think pieces about systemic rot in American small towns. Water, gentlemen. His voice came out steady despite the earthquake in his hands. Stone looked up slowly. Let the silence stretch like wire. Let Brandon feel what it meant to serve instead of demand. Please, and thank you. 2 words that had never crossed Brandon's lips in this establishment. 2 words that cost him everything he'd believed mattered. He poured carefully, didn't spill despite the tremor, set the pitcher down with both hands like it contained nitroglycerin instead of tap water and ice. Stone nodded once, not forgiveness, just acknowledgement that effort was being made. Progress looked like this: small, uncomfortable, authentic. Lily sat in her customary position under table 9, not hiding anymore, just drawing because that's what she did, how she processed the world. Today's subject, Brandon carrying a water pitcher with concentration etched into his face. The rendering kinder than he deserved, but Lily had always perceived people's potential instead of their past. Sarah brought coffee to the Brotherhood's table. Her hands had stopped shaking somewhere around day 3. Something had crystallized during those hours when Jake was in custody and Lily was threatened, and the entire corrupt system tried to silence her daughter through intimidation. The exhaustion remained, but underneath, steel forged in fire that wouldn't bend again. On the house, you earned it. Stone shook his head. We pay, same as everyone. That's how respect actually works in the real world. Money hit the table, exact amount plus 30% tip. The Brotherhood didn't accept charity and didn't offer it. They dealt in fairness and follow-through, and the kind of loyalty that couldn't be purchased at any price. The door chimed. Jake walked in wearing his colors and the particular ease of a man no longer carrying a decade of guilt like stones in his chest. He'd spent the week reconnecting with Lily, teaching her to ride a bicycle, sharing stories about Michael that Sarah had been too broken to speak aloud. He slid into the booth across from Stone. Sarah brought coffee without being asked. Their eyes met, something unspoken passing between them. Not romance, not yet, but the beginning of something that might resemble healing if they gave it time and care. FBI's moving forward with RICO charges, Harrison Collins and 12 others. Senators looking at 15 years federal minimum. Stone pushed a newspaper across the table. Your niece made front page, again. The photo showed Lily holding her notebook with expressions serious beyond her years. Caption, the 7-year-old who dismantled Montana's corruption network. Jake studied the image, pride and concern warring in his chest. She's been through too much for someone who should be worried about second grade. She's stronger than you think. Trauma doesn't always break people. Sometimes it builds them into something unbreakable. She's 7 years old. She's a Morrison, your brother's daughter. That genetic legacy means something. Jake touched the empty space in his pocket where Michael's bandana used to live. He'd transferred it to Lily permanently. Watched her tie it around her wrist like a talisman. Watched her touch it when she got scared the same way he had for 10 years straight. The transfer felt right, like Michael's protection passing to someone who needed it more than a broken ex-Marine living in the past. Across town, Senator Richard Carter sat in a federal holding cell, reviewing his statement for the plea deal his attorney had negotiated. Testify against the other 11 conspirators. Name every corrupt official. Detail every bribe with dates and amounts. In exchange, 12 years instead of 25. His lawyer had called it a gift. Richard called it the seventh circle of hell. Through reinforced glass, he could see other inmates. Men who'd committed violence for survival while he'd committed it for convenience. Men who'd stolen to feed families while he'd stolen to maintain appearances. The distinction felt meaningless in this concrete box. His phone privileges were limited, but Brandon had called 3 times. Each time Richard declined. Couldn't face his son yet. Couldn't see his own failures reflected in the boy's desperate attempt at redemption. A guard brought lunch, mystery meat and vegetables that might have been edible during the previous decade. He ate mechanically, tasted nothing, felt everything. Rebecca's voice in his head, clear as if she were standing beside him. You're better than this, Richard. I married the man you could be, not the man you became. But she'd been wrong. He'd proved it with spectacular thoroughness. His cellmate, a man named Torres, serving 8 years for embezzlement, watched him pick at food. First week's always hardest. You still think you don't belong here. Give it a month. You'll realize we all belong exactly where we end up. Richard looked up. You sound like you've made peace with it. I stole from my employer to pay for my daughter's cancer treatment. She died anyway. I belong here because I chose wrong, even though I chose for the right reasons. You belong here because you chose wrong for the wrong reasons. We're not the same, Senator. Don't confuse us. The words hit like physical blows. At Pinewood Elementary, Lily returned to school for the first time since the arrest became national news. Her teacher had warned the class repeatedly, no questions about the news coverage, no special treatment. Treat Lily like any other student. The children lasted approximately 40 seconds before someone cracked. Is it true you drew pictures that put a senator in prison? Did actual Hell's Angels rescue you? Are you famous now? Can I have your autograph? Lily shrank into her seat. The attention felt like pressure, like expectations she couldn't possibly meet, like people wanting her to be something larger than a 7-year-old who just wanted her mother to stop getting hurt. At recess, she hid behind the portable classrooms with her notebook, drew herself small and invisible, drew the world flowing past without noticing her. A shadow fell across the page. Emma stood there, preacher's granddaughter, the girl who'd been grabbed by mistake and held in a basement for 3 hours of pure terror. 9 years old with eyes that had stared into darkness and survived. Can I sit with you? Lily nodded without speaking. They sat in silence. 2 kids processing trauma, the only way children instinctively understand together without words, just presence. Do you have nightmares? Emma's voice came out smaller than her physical size suggested. Every single night, about men taking me away, about Uncle Jake not coming back like he promised. Me too. About the basement, about not knowing if Papa would find me before something worse happened. But he did find you. Because of you. Because you drew those pictures. Because you were brave first when nobody else would be. Lily looked at her hands, at the red bandana tied around her wrist like armor. I didn't feel brave. I felt terrified. My papa says that's what bravery actually is. Being terrified and doing it anyway. They sat with that truth. Let it settle. Let it mean something. Want to draw together? Lily offered her crayons. Emma took the purple one, started drawing. Not trauma, not fear, just a tree with strong roots and branches reaching towards sunlight. Healing looked like this, quiet, gradual. 2 kids sharing crayons and wordless understanding. That evening, Jake appeared at Sarah's apartment with groceries and no explanation. Started cooking dinner like it was the most natural thing in the world. Sarah watched from the doorway, arms crossed, defenses still up, but crumbling incrementally. You don't have to do this every night. I know. He kept chopping vegetables. Some recipe Michael used to make. Their mother's recipe before that. Family continuity in a casserole dish. Michael would have, her voice fractured. Jake stopped chopping, turned to face his sister-in-law for the first time without guilt standing between them like a wall. Michael would have wanted me here, taking care of you two, being the brother I should have been 10 years ago when it actually mattered. You were here when we needed you most. I should have been here all along. That's the truth we both know. Sarah stepped into the kitchen, took the knife from his hands, finished chopping because she needed something to occupy hands that wanted to shake with emotion, threatening to overflow. You're here now. That's what counts. Lily needs family. I need... She couldn't finish the sentence. I know. He did. Could see it in the way she held herself together through sheer will. Could see the cracks forming. Could see that eventually she'd need to fall apart and someone would need to catch her when she did. Lily appeared in the doorway, hair wet from bath, father's dog tags clinking against her chest, uncle's bandana around her wrist, wearing her armor of memory and protection. Are you staying for dinner, Uncle Jake? If that's acceptable to your mom. Lily looked at Sarah with hope, so naked it hurt to witness directly. Sarah nodded, couldn't speak past the tightness strangling her throat. They ate together. 3 people learning to be family. Learning that blood wasn't the only bond that mattered. That presence in staying and choosing each other every day meant more than any genetic connection. After dinner, Lily brought out her notebooks. Not the evidence ones locked in an FBI evidence room. New ones, pages of drawings showing her week. Uncle Jake teaching her to ride a bike without training wheels. Mama smiling genuinely for the first time in memory. Bear bringing flowers to the diner because that's what gentle giants do. Brandon apologizing properly with tears he didn't try to hide. I'm making a happy book now, to remember the good things instead of just the bad ones. Jake flipped through pages, each one a small miracle. This child who documented cruelty for 6 months now, choosing to document kindness. Choosing to believe the world could be different if people decided to make it so. Can I add something? He pulled out his phone, showed her a photo of Michael in uniform. Young and confident and alive. That's my daddy. That's my little brother. He was 22 there, fresh out of boot camp. Thought he was invincible the way young men do. Lily studied the photo with an artist's analytical eye. Can I draw him? I don't remember his face clearly anymore. It's getting fuzzy. Sarah made a sound like something breaking internally. Jake wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Let her lean into him. Let her grieve what she'd been too busy surviving to properly process. Yeah, little one. You can draw him, and I'll tell you stories while you work. About the time he jumped off a bridge on a dare and broke his ankle. About the time he tried to cook Thanksgiving dinner and almost burned down the apartment. About how he met your mama and knew in 5 minutes she was it for him forever. They stayed up past Lily's bedtime. Jake talking, Sarah crying quietly. Lily drawing her father back into existence, one careful line at a time. The picture wasn't technically perfect. 7-year-olds lack refined motor skills, but she captured something essential. The smile, the kindness in his eyes, the way he looked at the world like it was full of possibility instead of threats. Sarah took the drawing with hands that shook for different reasons now. First image of Michael she could look at without falling apart completely. Thank you, whispered to both of them. To Jake for coming back. To Lily for being brave enough to remember. 2 weeks after the arrest, the town council held an emergency meeting. The corruption had metastasized so deeply that half the council faced federal charges. The remaining members voted unanimously to pass the Lily Morrison Act. Mandatory respect training for anyone serving the public. Zero tolerance for harassment of service workers. Whistleblower protections with teeth. Penalties severe enough to mean something instead of being another cost of doing business. The vote was symbolic. Everyone understood that. But symbols mattered when you were trying to rebuild trust in institutions that had failed spectacularly and publicly. Chief Daniels attended the meeting in full-dress uniform, made a statement that would cost him politically but restore his ability to sleep at night. Lily Morrison is 7 years old. She documented systemic injustice when every adult in this town looked away because it was convenient. She asked for help when 42 witnesses chose silence because it was safer. She believed the truth mattered enough to risk everything, including her own safety. If we can't protect children like her, we don't deserve the badges we wear or the trust we've been given. Action beat number 1. The applause was thunderous. Standing ovation that lasted 3 minutes. Grown men and women crying openly. The Brotherhood attended in full colors. Silent witness. No speeches, just presence. Reminder that some protections came from unexpected places when official channels failed. After the meeting, Stone found Daniels in the parking lot. You know that speech probably ended your career in law enforcement. Good. Maybe the next chief will have the spine to do the job correctly from day one. Daniels lit a cigarette with hands that had finally stopped shaking after 5 years. I've been watching this town rot for half a decade, telling myself I was being strategic, building an airtight case, waiting for the perfect moment. Truth is, I was scared. Scared of losing my pension, my reputation, my comfortable life where I could pretend I was one of the good guys. And now I can look my children in the eye without flinching. That's worth more than any pension or reputation. They stood in comfortable silence. 2 men who'd chosen principle over convenience, who'd decided that legacy mattered more than security. Brotherhood's got your back. You need work after this, we'll find you something meaningful. Daniel smiled. I appreciate that more than you know, but I think I'm finished with law enforcement entirely. Might try teaching, show kids what integrity actually looks like before the world beats it out of them. He drove away toward an uncertain future that felt cleaner than the compromised past he was leaving behind. Brandon Carter's sentencing hearing arrived on a Tuesday morning. Ironic timing, same day of the week he'd slapped Sarah Morrison and set this entire catastrophe in motion. Action beat number 2. He stood before Judge Anderson, brought in from out of county to avoid conflicts of interest, and listened to charges read aloud. Assault, battery, conspiracy to intimidate witnesses. The prosecution had been generous, could have added a dozen more. His attorney negotiated a plea, 6 months community service, 2 years probation, mandatory counseling, completion of victim impact program, and the creative sentence that had been Sarah's idea work as a waiter at Red Eagle Diner under her direct supervision. The judge accepted the plea, looked Brandon in the eye with the particular intensity of someone who'd seen too many privileged kids waste their second chances. Mr. Carter, you're 17 years old, still technically a minor. The law gives you room for rehabilitation that adults don't receive. But understand this clearly. You participated in your father's crimes, you benefited from his corruption, and when a 7-year-old girl showed more courage than you've shown in your entire privileged life, you tried to silence her through intimidation. That's not youthful indiscretion. That's character, or lack thereof. Brandon kept his eyes down, accepted the weight of judgment. You have 6 months to prove you're more than your worst day, 6 months to demonstrate that change is possible. Don't waste it. In the gallery, Lily sat between Sarah and Jake. She'd insisted on attending, wanted to see justice with her own eyes, wanted to witness accountability. When the judge dismissed court, Brandon turned toward them, caught Lily's eye, mouthed thank you for reasons he couldn't fully articulate even to himself. Lily nodded, not forgiveness exactly, but recognition that he was trying. That effort counted for something. That afternoon, Brandon returned to the diner for his first real shift. Sarah handed him an apron worn soft from years of use. Michael's apron. She'd kept it in a box for 2 years, along with his other belongings she couldn't bear to discard. This belonged to my husband. He worked here for 6 months before he deployed to Afghanistan. Saved every tip. Bought my engagement ring with that money. You understand what I'm entrusting you with. Brandon held the apron like it might shatter. His legacy, his honor. Don't disrespect either one. He tied it on with hands that had finally stopped shaking. Pulled the order pad from the pocket. Found Michael's last notation still there in faded ink. Table 4, extra nice, it's her birthday. Small kindness, casual attention to detail. The kind of person Michael Morrison had been. Action beat number 3. Brandon started taking orders. Messed up twice in the first hour. got yelled at by a trucker who didn't care about his story or his circumstances, learned that waiting tables was exponentially harder than it looked, and humility tasted bitter, but necessary. At table 9, Lily drew him working. Not cruel Brandon this time. Not privileged Brandon, who thought the world owed him deference. Just a kid trying to earn redemption one refill at a time. By closing time, his feet hurt, and his ego was demolished, and he'd earned $63 in tips. He tried to give it to Sarah. That's yours. You earned it with actual labor. I don't deserve, maybe not, but you worked for it. That's how the real world actually functions. Labor, compensation, dignity. He kept the money, felt the weight of it. First thing he had ever earned instead of been given by people who expected nothing in return. Small victory. But victories started small before they became transformations. 1 month later, the FBI finished their comprehensive investigation. 12 convictions, 27 more under indictment. Financial crimes uncovered totaling $40 million over a decade of systematic corruption. Montana's network dismantled entirely because a 7-year-old kept a notebook and refused to be silent. Action beat number 4. The lead prosecutor gave a press conference that went viral within hours. Credited Lily's evidence as the foundation for everything that followed. Showed her drawings blown up to poster size. Meticulous documentation that demonstrated children see clearly what adults train themselves to ignore for comfort. This case proves irrefutably that witness protection isn't just for adults. That children's testimony matters and should be taken seriously. That documentation in any form, even crayon drawings, can be powerful evidence when it's detailed and consistent and grounded in truth. The press conference exploded across every platform. Lily's face everywhere again. The attention overwhelming for someone who just wanted to be a regular kid. Jake found her hiding in her room. Under the bed like she was 5 instead of 7, clutching her father's dog tags and his red bandana and a stuffed bear that Bear had given her after the rescue. Too much attention. He lay on the floor beside the bed without trying to coax her out. Everyone wants me to be brave constantly, but I'm scared all the time now. More than before. Yeah, me too. You're not scared. You're a biker. You fight people who deserve it. I'm terrified most days. Have been since your dad died. Scared I'll fail again. Scared I'm not enough. Scared that being present won't matter in the end. Lily rolled out from under the bed, studied his face for deception, found only truth. But you keep showing up anyway. That's the only choice that matters. Being scared is fine. Running away is fine temporarily. But eventually you have to decide, do I want to be the person who hides forever, or the person who keeps trying even when it's hard? What if I just want to be a regular armed kid who draws pictures and plays with friends? Then be that. Draw your pictures. Go to school. Play with Emma. Let the adults handle the heavy responsibilities. But what if other people need help like I needed help? Jake smiled despite himself. Then I guess you're stuck being extraordinary. Sorry, kiddo. That's the Morrison curse. We care too much to walk away when it matters. She crawled into his lap. 7 years old and already carrying weight no child should bear. Can extraordinary people still be scared? Especially them. That's what makes them extraordinary. They're terrified and they do it anyway. They sat on her bedroom floor, uncle and niece, 2 people learning that family wasn't about blood or obligation. It was about presence on the hard days, and staying through the uncomfortable truths and choosing each other when walking away would be easier. 5 years later, Lily Morrison walked into Red Eagle Diner at 7:30 on a Tuesday morning. Not 7 anymore. 12. Gangly limbs and braces and the particular awkwardness of almost teenage years. But her eyes remained the same. Observant, kind, seeing what others missed or chose to ignore. She wore her father's dog tags, his red bandana tied around her backpack strap, carrying his legacy without being crushed by the weight of it. Sarah stood behind the counter. 47 now, owner, manager, the kind of boss who remembered everyone's name and asked about their families and never let anyone feel invisible or less than human. Jake sat at table 9 with Brotherhood members who'd become permanent fixtures. He'd moved into Sarah's apartment 3 years ago. Not romantic partners, not exactly, but family in the way that mattered more than definitions. co-parenting Lily, supporting each other, building something stable from the rubble of shared trauma. Morning, Mama. Morning, Uncle Jake. Lily kissed Sarah's cheek, slid into the booth beside Jake with the ease of routine. Big day. Jake pushed hot chocolate across the table. Made the right way, Michael's way, family recipe. Documentary presentation at school about whistleblowers and civic courage throughout American history. You using your own story, some of it, mostly focusing on other cases. Aaron Brockovich, Pentagon Papers, kids who reported abuse when adults looked away, showing that regular people can change systems when they decide to try. Stone looked up from his newspaper. 73 now, still riding, still leading, still present every Tuesday morning without fail. You nervous about presenting? Terrified, but doing it anyway. She grinned. Someone taught me that's what counts most. Action beat number 5, the door chimed. Brandon Carter walked in. 22, college graduate, social work degree earned through actual effort. No longer the smirking, entitled kid, but not quite comfortable in his redemption yet. Still working on it daily. He'd finished his 6 months at the diner 4 years ago. Kept coming back anyway. Worked through high school while his father was in prison. Paid for college with his earnings instead of trust fund money. Learned that labor had dignity and kindness, cost nothing, and privilege was a responsibility, not an entitlement. Now he ran a youth program for at-risk kids. Taught them that one bad decision didn't define you, but patterns did. That change required more than apology. Required consistent daily choice to be better than yesterday. Table for one, Sarah's voice still carried echoes of old hurt, but mostly it carried peace. Actually, I brought someone, if that's acceptable. He stepped aside. Senator Richard Carter walked in. 60 now, served 8 years of his 12-year sentence. Released early for cooperation and good behavior. Broken in ways that prison couldn't fix, but accountable in ways that money couldn't buy. The diner went silent. Richard met Sarah's eyes directly. I don't expect forgiveness. Don't deserve it. But my son said you might allow me to apologize properly. Face to face. Human to human. Sarah looked at Lily, 12 years old enough to decide for herself. Lily studied the man who'd tried to silence her, who'd ordered her kidnapping by proxy, who'd represented everything wrong with power and privilege and the particular arrogance of men who thought rules were for other people. She saw someone different now, broken, humbled. Learning what she'd learned at 7, that courage meant being present even when you'd rather hide from consequences. You can sit, but you order like everyone else, and you say please and thank you. Richard's eyes watered. Thank you for that, Grace. I'd like coffee. Black, please. Brandon served his father, role reversal complete. The son who'd learned service teaching the father who'd forgotten it existed. They sat together at a small table, talked quietly. Not reconciliation exactly, but the beginning of something that might become understanding if they gave it years of consistent work. Lily watched, drew the scene. Not documentation this time, just observation. 2 men learning what she'd known all along, that dignity wasn't negotiable and respect wasn't optional, and change required more than words. After they left, Stone pulled out a small velvet box, official looking. Got something for you, little warrior. Action beat number 6, inside a patch. Honorary Hells Angels colors, child-sized, with her name embroidered in a design she recognized from her own drawings. You don't have to wear it, but we wanted you to know your family always will be. You needed help, and we answered. But you taught us something bigger. You taught us that the smallest voice can change everything when it refuses to stay silent. Lily held the patch like treasure. Can I really be a Hells Angel? Honorary member. When you're old enough, if you want to prospect for real membership, we'll talk, but for now, just know, you ride with us, always have, always will. She hugged him. This 73-year-old Vietnam veteran who'd mobilized 120 bikers because a 7-year-old asked for help, and that mattered more than anything else. Thank you for answering when I asked. Thank you for asking. Takes more courage than most people ever find in their entire lives. That evening, Lily gave her presentation. Classmates watched footage of the diner incident that had changed everything. Read about the corruption exposed, Saw her crayon drawings blown up on screen with dates and details. She talked about fear and courage and the difference between the two. Talked about systems that protect power instead of people. Talked about how change happens when regular people decide silence costs more than speaking up. Her teacher cried. Her classmates asked questions that proved they understood the stakes. Emma sat in the front row and applauded until her hands hurt. Walking home, Lily held Jake's hand on one side and Sarah's on the other. Family formed from fragments, healed from necessity, stronger for the breaking. You know what I learned from all this? Lily's voice carried wisdom beyond her years. What's that? That presence isn't just physical, it's emotional. It's staying when things get hard. It's choosing people over and over. It's deciding that family means the people who see you at your absolute worst and love you anyway. Sarah stopped walking, pulled Lily into a hug that threatened to crack ribs. Jake wrapped his arms around both of them. Morrison family, blood and chosen, broken and healed. Learning that love looked like presence and protection and the daily choice to stay. At Red Eagle Diner, the light stayed on through the night. Table 9 reserved with a brass plaque. Brotherhood tradition continuing indefinitely. On the wall, Lily's original drawings, all 73 pages, framed professionally, preserved as evidence transformed into art. Underneath, a larger plaque with words that became legend, in honor of Lily Morrison, who proved that the smallest voice can speak the loudest truth when it refuses to be silent. May we all have her courage to document injustice and her faith to believe someone will care. The words rippled outward, changed laws in 17 states, inspired children across the country, reminded adults that courage comes in unexpected packages, and somewhere in Montana on Tuesday mornings, you could hear the thunder of motorcycles. Brotherhood riding for those who couldn't ride for themselves. Still present, still protecting, still proving that family isn't blood. It's who answers when you ask for help. Epilogue. Post-credit scene, Lily's bedroom, 5 years later, age 12. Walls covered with photographs instead of drawings. Growth, evolution. But on a special shelf, 73 notebooks, her original documentation, preserved in archival boxes, plus one new notebook, volume 74, title page in careful handwriting, the good ones a record of kindness. Page 1, drawing a bear kneeling in the diner. Caption underneath, the day the biggest man made himself small so a little girl could feel safe. Lily sits at her desk, opens to a blank page, starts drawing today. Brandon serving his father coffee. Both of them trying, both of them learning. Voice over to Lily's voice, older, wiser. My dad told me something before he deployed. Uncle Jake reminded me of it later. He said, heroes aren't people who aren't scared. Heroes are people who do what's right even when they're terrified. I was terrified when I asked Uncle Jake for help, but he answered, and that made all the difference. Not because he was brave, but because he was there. That's all any of us can do. Be there. Answer when someone asks. Choose courage over comfort. My notebooks used to document cruelty. Now they document kindness. Both matter, but only one builds the world I want to live in. She closes the notebook, places it on the shelf next to the others. Camera pulls back, shows all 74 notebooks lined up. Evidence that the world can be both cruel and kind, that children see clearly, that documentation matters, that asking for help is brave, that answering is braver. Final shot, red bandana tied around the shelf. Michael's bandana. Jake's guilt transformed into Lily's strength. Family legacy, fade to black.